Good morning, everyone. I'm Luli Castro, Swiftlam's Executive Director, and it is my pleasure to welcome you to this morning's webinar. I is for Identify with Who You Are. This webinar, as you know, is the second webinar of 9 in our Diversity Discovery Institute, or DDI, as I like to call it. And the DDI, for those of you that are new or those that need a refresher, is going to include training and foster diversity as a value in your libraries. With a variety of trainers, DDI is going to offer dedicated training focused on each of the beginning letters of the word diversity, D-I-V-E-R-S-I-T and Y. Because you just can't teach diversity in one day or one session, these webinars are being planned to begin the process of understanding diversity one small step at a time. Each of these trainings will address a new component or idea or a theme of diversity. And I hope that you will join us each month or so, always on a Friday at 10 o'clock Eastern, and see where this path takes us. Today's webinar is being presented by Julie Tompkins. Julie is an educator. She works in all grade levels from kindergarten through college for the past 10 years. She teaches courses ranging from introduction to college to cultural diversity. She was born and raised in Grand Rapids, Michigan, so she's real happy to be here today in Florida. Before she made the move to Florida, where she earned her MS in education from Florida Gulf Coast University. She uses her real-life experiences along with research-based studies when creating her workshops. And now I'd like to ask you to welcome Julie. Take it away, Julie.
Good morning, everyone. I'm so glad that you could be here. First, I just want to say I hope that you can hear me. If you cannot hear me, please go ahead and just type that in the chat box. I believe I have the microphone adjusted correctly. When I first met Luli, she was so excited about doing this Diversity Institute, and I loved sitting down and hearing her ideas of the different things to share with you. Perfect. I'm glad you can hear me. Now, when we were sitting down with the letters, I just came up with, you have to identify with who you are before you can identify with who other people are. I know one thing that a lot of people have told me my entire life is you have to love yourself before you can love others. And in order to love yourself, you need to know who you are. In the world, we have so many different social constructs that help us to prepare us to see who we are and what our role is going to be in society. On the screen, you'll see what's the web of identity. And on here, there's a whole bunch of different things that help to define who you are. Now, before we go into any of these, I want you just to think, one of the hardest things is picking one word that describes you. And every interview you go to, everything that you look at, people always say, who are you? How would you describe yourself? I want you to go ahead, just take a moment, think of one word that describes you, and go ahead and type that in the chat so that everyone can see. I see energetic, a learner, caring, intense personality, thank you, Luli, open, a team player, helpful, linear. And when I think of this and I want to name a word for me, I think of teacher because that's a major part of my life, whether it's with my kindergarteners or with my college students and anyone in between. Open-minded. That's awesome. A lot of these words are great words when you're thinking of people that work with the community. And when you're working with your patrons, these are all words that we need to have in our lives to be able to do it. But you're more than just one word. You're a whole person, a whole being. And on this web of identity, we have education. Some of you may have a GED. You may have a doctoral degree. Fall anywhere in between there. Maybe you know someone that dropped out of high school. We have religion. People come from different types of backgrounds. We have roles. Where are you in life? Your age, your values in society, where you work. Well, I'm pretty sure I can guess where you all work. Your gender, your peers, the status you have. And we're going to go into these a little deeper in the next 90 minutes. And at the end, we'll wrap it up. We'll come up with some more words that go along with this. And we'll see if you can think of more than just that one word that's going to describe who you are. Oh, wrong way, sorry. Now, the definition of identity is the reflection, self-concept, or self-image that we each derive from our family, gender, cultural, ethnic, and individual socialization process. Now, if you look at the picture, you have the kitten who is just a little baby, and we all just think, oh, so fluffy. But when he's looking in the mirror, who does he see? He sees the lion that's inside of him. And when you're coming up with your identity, you need to know who you see when you look in the mirror. We all have a self-image, whether it's positive or negative. Maybe we have a little bit of both in our life. Our family helps to define who we are, our gender, our culture, our ethnicity, and the things that have happened in our life to make us who we are. Now, there are three main levels of identity. We have the personal, which is what makes us unique, our relational, which are our relationships with others, and our cultural, communal, or social, which is pretty much everything else around us. We're going to discuss the personal and the cultural, communal, social later, but what I want to look at is the relational and our relationships with others. Now, I know me, I'm a very outgoing person. I love talking to people. I love meeting new people. But when I look at my immediate surroundings and those that are close to me, I only have maybe one or two people who I share everything with. But I have a lot of people that I consider my friends. When people meet me, they go, oh, you're a lot different than what I thought you would be. And I just kind of laugh because one day I may be in my cowboy boots with my jeans on, mudding, listening to country music. The next day, I may be driving down the road and rapping. You never know who's going to show up at your door with me. And that's just, it also depends on when I'm with people, how I present myself, what identity I have, depending on which friends I'm with. When I'm at work, I have a completely different identity. I'm the leader. I'm the teacher. I'm the one that everyone's supposed to look up to help them figure out what they're going to do with their lives. Now, there are a lot of theorists that have done studies and they've come up with their theories on how we define our identity. One person we are going to look at is Bronfenbrenner. Mouthful right there. And he has this theory which focuses on the social context in which people live and the people who influence their development. So when we are talking about the relational, we need to look at all of these people because in our development, it's also these people who help us define our identity. And I hope that you guys can see this well. In here, we have different systems, and you can see legal services, neighbors, our family, our school. Now, just looking at this before we break it down, I want you to think, who has helped you become who you are more than anyone else? Go ahead, let's see if we can get some sharing going on. Type it in the chat box. I see a lot of family members, teachers, peers, parents. And I can understand how our parents, if you look at it, you see that family is the closest to the individual. And our family does help us. And you can also think of this in terms of your patrons. When they're coming up with their identity, what kind of family are they coming from? We have our school. What schools are they going to? Their peers. What kind of friends are they hanging out with? You probably have been impacted by your peers a lot more. I see a lot of the family, but your peers have always been there and you've looked at them, especially when you're in school. As a middle school teacher, I can tell you, when we're looking at another one of the theories, middle school students are in an area where they're trying to learn who they are. It's your identity and your confusion about that. When you're in that stage, your peers have so much influence on your life. They help you make decisions on what you're going to do in the future. Your family is there. They're the ones that support you. They hopefully are the ones giving you your set values in life. And we have to realize that every person is unique. No two people are the same. We all have different values in life. Even you and a sibling who were raised in the same family may have different views on many things in life. We're going to dig into Bronfenbrenner's theory just a little bit deeper. When we're breaking this down, we see that the microsystem is the direct interactions with parents, teachers, peers, and others. These are the people that you talk to, you see, you walk around with every day. The direct interactions that you have with them can positively and negatively affect your identity. I know as a teacher, when I look back to myself, the person that probably impacted me more so than my parents and what I'm doing in my life is another teacher. When I was in high school, I was not the best student. I was into things and my identity was completely screwed from what it is today. I was into drugs, I was into alcohol, I was into partying, going out and doing anything and everything, skipping school. And I had one teacher who sat down with me and looked at me and said, "Julie, this is not you. I don't know why you're choosing to take the road that you are, but you can be someone different. Look in the mirror and find out who you are." I want you just to take a moment. You don't have to share this one unless you want to. Think about outside of your family. I know that Sharon has shared with us that there was a fellow librarian, but I want you just to think of someone outside of your family who's impacted your road, where you have chose to go in life, who has impacted your identity. If you'd like to share with us, we're more than welcome to you going ahead and typing in there in your chat. But I'm just going to give you about 2 minutes to just self-reflect. Think about who besides your family could be that person. My favorite with those of you that are sharing, you have a name that goes along with it, not just a person. You can remember their name. When we look at the people that have impacted us, either positively or negatively, we remember their name. We remember the situation. We remember the exact moment where they've helped to create our identity. They've helped to make us figure out who we are as a whole. Without them stepping in, who knows where we would be at this point in our life. That's part of our microsystem. If we don't have that strong microsystem around us, then we're going to be lost. We're going to be looking outside of that microsystem to find other people and other things that are going to influence our life and help us become who we are. When we look in the outside of that, we have the mesosystem. That's the linkages between the family and school and the relationship between students and peers. Relationships are things that help us mold together. When we're looking at the school and our family, maybe some of us didn't have a great school time, and that's made us not like education. Well, was that just because you had a direct interaction with a teacher that was negative? Or was that because the linkage between your family and school, maybe your family didn't have a great time going into your school and a great time interacting with your teachers and helping you become who you needed to be in life? Outside of that, we have our experiences in settings in which a child does not have an active role influence in the child's experiences. So, in your neighborhood and dealing with the social welfare services, you can't figure out where your neighborhood is. You're placed there. That's where your family grew up. Your neighbors, you can't pick and choose your neighbors unless you're going out, you're buying a new house based on your neighbors. And we have our macro system, which is the broader culture in which students and teachers live. We're going to get into the macro system a little bit later when we start trying to figure out who we are. When we're talking about attitudes and ideologies of the culture, where do you live? Who did you grow up with? What kind of society was it? Here in Fort Myers, we have such a great macro system. It's so culturally diverse. And that's why I think this diversity helps us a lot, because we're stuck on who our identity is and where we were raised and the different things in our life. So in order to look outside of those walls, we need to figure out who we are, and we need to understand who the people are around us, who's in our macro system. We also have the chronosystem, and that is the socio-historical conditions of the development. And that's life events. We have life events that mold our identity. I know I've had family tragedies. I've had different things that have happened over time that have helped me become who I am. It also goes back to that teacher. Without her in high school, I don't know where I would be now. That point helped me to see what I was going to do. And it's a bunch of patterns, and we can see different things that happen in those patterns. If you stay on the same pattern, life's not going to change. When you change your pattern, that is when you grow as a person. Now, another theorist besides Bronfenbrenner is Erik Erikson. Many of us have probably seen these stages of human development before. When we're looking at them, they help us to mold how we develop in life. When we're looking at the first level, down at the bottom, our trust versus mistrust, that's from birth till about age 1.5. This is where we are trying to figure out who in the world we can trust. Do we have strong relationships with our families? Are we getting the proper attachment that we need? The trust versus mistrust, if we went back to Bronfenbrenner, would be part of our microsystem. That's our direct interaction with our parents and the people around us. When we get into the second level, we get into the autonomy versus shame and doubt. This is where we learn if we can trust ourselves, if what we're doing is right. It's where we're becoming assertive, and it's where the kids are walking away from their parents and they're picking out what they want to do. We're kind of forming our identity right here. Are we going to be abstinent versus our parents? Are we going to have self-confidence? If in this stage we don't get the autonomy that we need, which is a skill and ability to do things on our own, and we have shame and doubt, then our identity is probably going to be a little more timid and a little held back. When we get into the third level, we get into initiative versus guilt. And this is where they consider children to still be assertive about themselves, and it's happening more frequently. This is ages 3 to 5, and you have your terrible twos, but 3 to 5, if you've ever had children or you're around children, this is when you get no from them all the time. And it's a time of vigor and action and the behaviors that the parents may see as aggressive. This is where they're learning who they are. It's where your interpersonal skills are coming out through activities. It's where they begin to make up games and figure out who they are. And in this stage, I want to say is when you'll determine if you're going to be a leader in life. If you don't have the initiative at age 3 to 5, you're not setting the foundation for the rest of your years. After that, we go into industry versus inferiority. This is competence. And here, this is where teachers start to take a very important role in a child's life. If you think back, it's ages 5 to 12, so you're going into elementary school. If you think back to elementary school, you might be able to find that one teacher who, instead of trying to make you competent, you felt like they were just trying to pick on you. I know when I look back at my second grade, I had a teacher. Her name was Miss Behe, and I'll never forget her. She made me feel like I was inferior to her. Instead of being someone that I could look up to, I was scared of her. The things that she chose to do to me, not abusive, but the things that she chose to do to me kind of damaged who I was. It made me always question the abilities that I had and the different things that I could do at that age. Next up, we get into the identity versus identity confusion. Also can be role confusion. Here, identity, huge part of our lives, and this is during adolescence from 12 to 18. Now, you couldn't pay me to go back to middle or high school at this point. I'm not sure about any of you, but this is when children are definitely stepping up and figuring out who they are. This is where you started making most of your gains on creating your identity. Now, children become more independent, and it's where they begin to look for their future terms of careers and family and where they want to live. And it's when you decide how you're going to belong in society and how you're going to try to fit in. Now, I want you to think back to middle and high school. What things were the most confusing to you when dealing with your identity when you were in high school? What were you trying to figure out using your friends, talking to your friends, figuring out who they were, what you looked at them for? Go ahead and in your chat, just the things you were confused about with yourself in high school. We'll rephrase that. Seems I don't see anyone. What I mean is, if you look at students who are in high school, what are the different things in their life that they're trying to identify with? What are they trying to figure out who they are in that stage? Excuse me. Trying to fit in with others. Career goals. Catherine, that's an amazing one. The popular group, or the geeks, or the nobodies. Reputation. Sexuality. I was hoping somebody was going to come up with that one. Wanting to be accepted. Awesome. Great, great suggestions. Now, with Erik Erikson, when he was here, the biggest one that he said, he had two identities that were involved, the sexual and the occupational. And when you're dealing with the sexual, which we had one of you throw out there at us, they're trying to figure out who they are with their bodies. You have all of your hormones raging when you're in high school. Trust, I'm at a high school this year teaching middle and high school, and you see it every day walking down there. They are trying to figure out what they like. And when you're at this age, you were feeling the same way. In today's society, the different norms on sexuality are a lot different. Students are starting to explore the different avenues of sexuality versus just the mainstream male and female relationships. And if we don't accept this, or if they can't accept it, that's when the identity confusion comes into play. That's where an identity crisis starts to happen. And so students, and maybe you, started to experiment with different lifestyles. Happen to push that is peer pressure. And peer pressure can help rebel against what the norms are. But this is where we also get students who have an uneasy feeling about themselves, and unhappiness occurs. It's where bullying takes top priority at the school. It's hard as a teacher to get up in front of a class and teach knowing that you have students that are going through these identity crises. And I'm not sure the majority of your patrons that come in, but I know as a teacher, I would hope that it was a lot of my students that are coming in for help. And you're also a professional that's looking at them at this age, and you can help them with an identity crisis. Maybe they're coming into you, they're trying to find books on the topic so that they can read about it and figure out who they are and where they want to go. When we look at the other and we're looking at the occupational, it's where we're asking people, what do you want to be when you grow up? Now, before I met that teacher who pushed me into teaching, if somebody asked me, what do you want to be when you grow up? I couldn't answer that question. I just wanted to grow up and get out of high school. I wasn't thinking about going to college. I wasn't thinking about any of my future. So when you think back, when you think back to when you were in high school, what did you want to be when you grew up? Go ahead and type in the chat box. Let's see if anyone actually put a librarian down. Catherine, I hear that a lot. Not a teacher or librarian because my mother was one. When you have family members that are teachers, you definitely hear all the stories when they come home and you kind of step back and go, I'll never do that. Now, when you're looking in the chat box, you see so different areas that people wanted to be in. Just reading these, I can tell a little bit more about who you are and what your identity is now. I loved animals back then, and maybe I would have chose that I wanted to be a zoologist. By knowing that, you can probably guess that part of my identity is having animals in my life. And Diane, you put that you wanted to be an environmental scientist. I'm pretty sure that you enjoy nature down here in Southwest Florida. You like going out and seeing things. But all of these choices have helped you come up with your identity and see who you are. If we look at the rest of Erik Erikson's stages of human development, they all are dealing with our adulthood, intimacy versus isolation. This is probably about ages 18 to 40, and this is where you want a relationship. This is where you want people in your life. You want someone other than a family member to be close to you. Now, some of you may have been in this stage or are in this stage right now. It's where we're out dating, where we're out trying to be who we are and find someone else who's going to mesh with us. Your identity during this period can get skewed. Maybe you're looking at your friends going, I want what they have. I want their relationship. So you try to change your identity to fit into a construct that somebody else is going to enjoy. After we get through the intimacy versus isolation, stage 7 is getting into further adulthood, ages 40 to 65. And this is, we've already established our careers, we've settled down with relationship, we've had our own families, and now we're developing a sense of being part of a bigger picture. So this is where we are starting to have more of an impact on other people's identity. And we're helping to mold them. And then our last one, integrity versus despair, is 65 years to older. And it's when we're becoming senior citizens and we slow down and we explore our life as a retired person. And we keep our integrity up. When we have the despair is when we feel unproductive and we're guilty about things that we did in our past. And when I'm looking at my identity and I'm trying to look at people who hold wisdom, this is usually the age group that you look at to help impact you and see how you want to grow. So those are my two big researchers. I won't go into too many about them. Do we have any questions so far about Bronfenbrenner or Erikson or any comments you would like to make? Go ahead and type them in the chat box. Alrighty, awesome. Well, we'll go on. When we're looking at our social identity, these are our top 4. We have our racial identity, which is socially constructed, and it still persists in the United States. We have our ethnic identity, which is derived from a sense of a shared heritage, history, traditions, values. the area of origin of our family, and sometimes our language, our gender identity, which is different than a sexual identity, how a particular culture demonstrates masculine and feminine social roles, and our national identity. If we want to break these down even into deeper, we can go into other identities that are out there. If you look on the screen, we have our personal, we have a cyber and a fantasy identity when we're talking about on the internet. We're going to go into each one of these, break them down a little bit, and this is where I want you to start internalizing things. This is where I want you to start thinking, where do I fit within this identity? Who am I based on the things on the screen? So, our first one we want to get into is our racial identity. And it's a social construct arising from efforts to categorize people into different groups. Social construct. Nobody out there says you have to be this, you have to be that. Where do you stand as a race? What race are you? When we look into science, there's very little genetic variation among humans. When I taught kindergarten, racial identity was a big one for my 5-year-olds. And I always tried to find a way for them to see beyond just the color of the skin. When they talked with each other, they would say, the black kid, the white kid. And me, as a person, I'm not one that just looks at the color of a person's skin. And just knowing black or white, there's more colors on the rainbow than just those colors. When you mix things together, it comes up with beautiful impact on society. Now, one of the distributors, I'm not sure which one it is, you can buy paint that is different colors, not like red, blue, pink. It's different colors of our skin. And instead of naming them black, brown, and white, they give them names like caramel, mocha, ivory. And I would have my students, we'd sit in a circle and we'd all go around and I'd have them all tell me, what color are you? Majority of the answers were the black, brown, or white. Then I got out the paint. And it was so interesting to give these kids paint brushes and let them sit down with these different colors and paint them right onto their skin. Maybe they're not just one of the colors, they're mixed, because we are all mixed somehow, some way in our past. And when they put the colors on, they can see that they're not brown. Maybe they're caramel mocha. And maybe they're not white, but they're ivory. Yes, USA is a huge melting pot of different ones. If you look at the third bullet point, the human population will become more alike as the races merge. I wish I would have put it in here, but when I was on one of my social media sites, an article popped up from, I believe it was USA Today, and it showed this beautiful face. And I was like, she doesn't have a race. She is a great mix. She's the melting pot of the USA. And I believe it said by the year 2020, that's what a majority of US citizens are going to look like. It's what the world is going to look like. It's not just brown, black, or white. We're not African American and white. We have so many interracial relationships where we have children that just are beautiful and they come out with this mixed race. Now, this is when I want you to think of yourself and think of what race you would probably identify with most. You don't have to type it, you can think about it. But maybe you have more than one race that you identify with. So go ahead and internalize that for a minute and think of the race that you are. So you can see some that have shared, we have mixed races in here. And it's hard because when you're getting those forms to fill out and it says, what race are you? Well, if you're Hispanic and you're Black, which box do you choose? Right there, the world is trying to put you in a category that you have to identify with. So Marcella, I would love to know from your standpoint, seeing that you put Hispanic and Black, when you get a checklist in front of you where they say fill out one of these circles with who you are, which one do you choose? Hispanic. Now me, I'm Caucasian, and I know by going on to Ancestry that I have a lot of Cherokee blood in my system. And it's hard for me to look on those forms and just put Caucasian, knowing that I have Native American blood in me. My great grandmother was full blooded. And so when I look at those forms, I go with what the world would look at me and identify me with. The world out there would identify me with white. I look white. Depends on where I go. A lot of people think I speak Spanish. But that is the box and the social construct that I would choose. When you're thinking of your identity, this is where a little confusion can come into play, and you might fit in more than one racial category. A lot of children being born into today's society, when we're talking about the races merging, they're going to have to come up with a new social construct if they're going to continue to ask people their racial identity, because we have so many mulatto children being born. See, just like Marcella, her kids have that issue as well. It's just out there in society, and when you walk through schools, you see just this beautiful rainbow of children coming out. You see it when you walk into the library. Diane, I see that right there. All the forms I ever completed for school were Caucasian. There was never any other choice for your generation. And you see as generations have grown and that the human population is becoming more alike, we're creating more of these categories. And my hope, and not everyone has to agree with me, my hope for the future is that they take this racial identity away. Does it really matter when you're answering questions what race you are? Especially when we have so many mixed races out there. So we're going to also go into our ethnic identity, which goes along with our racial identity. Now, our ethnicity is derived from a sense of shared heritage, history, traditions, values, similar behaviors, area origin, and language. When I think of my ethnic identity, I think of my great-grandmother, both of them. And where did they come from? And when I look at my family in general, what kinds of traditions and heritage do we have? When I'm coming up with my identity, there's so many stereotypes about different ethnic backgrounds. And you can't talk about identity and diversity without talking about stereotypes, which I believe later on we're going to hear more about stereotypes in this institute. Now, Bronfenbrenner's microsystem has our school, our family, and our peers. When we're talking about our family and our peers, a lot of times they have the same ethnic background as us. So when we're creating identities, it's going to be close to those peers around us because we have this sense of heritage and pride comes up with our ethnic identity. One thing my great-grandmother instilled on me was tradition. And my father and mother come from very different ethnic backgrounds. My one great-grandmother, as I said, was full-blooded Cherokee. My other one was full-blooded German. I don't know if any of you are German, but there's a stereotype for Germans as they're very rough. And My grandma was your stereotypical German, but a tradition that she taught me was food-wise, on the different things that I would choose to eat and we would have at holidays. With this being the winter holidays and Christmas coming up, I know that my family gets together, and a traditional meal that we have is German potato salad and kielbasa and sauerkraut, which I don't eat the sauerkraut. But it's just something that is a tradition in my family. However, when I get together with my father's side of the family and the Native Americans, we would eat a lot of food from the earth. And having German potato salad there, they put their noses up to it. They just were like, I can't believe you would eat that stuff. For those of you that don't know what German potato salad is, because it's amazing, it's bacon grease and vinegar with potatoes. Just yummy yum. So the Native Americans didn't agree with that being part of a tradition there. And when we look at the values, my German family, I would go there and I remember my great-grandfather and my great-grandmother's ability to communicate. My great-grandmother did whatever he said. The man was in charge. He told her what to do. But when I look over at my Native American side, they were equals. And so with your ethnic diversity and with all of the people around you, you have to look at them and remember that when you're dealing with ethnicity, people have different values and behaviors than you. When you're talking about language, and here in Southwest Florida, we have such a beautiful community with so many different languages. I love going to the beach and the different ethnicities that are down there. I giggle sometimes with friends and I'm like, I feel like we're the only ones that speak English here. I walk into Walmart sometimes and I feel the same way. But these are things that I am accepting of. And I understand that with the United States being a melting pot of all these different cultures coming in here and the different areas of origin and the different languages, that that's what it's going to be like here. As a teacher working in the community, or for you as librarians working with your patrons, you have to know that people identify with their ethnicity. They feel more comfortable with their ethnicity. That makes them, I don't want to say happy, but it's a comforting feeling knowing that you're around people who share your beliefs. And when you're coming here from a different area of origin, your language is so much a part of you that you don't want to let it die. And I have students in one of my classes, right now I have 6th grade reading and language arts. And in one of my class periods, I have 3 students that speak Spanish, monolingual. I have 2 that speak Portuguese, 1 that speaks French, and 1 that speaks French Creole, all monolingual. Why? Their area of origin are from all over the world, and they come here into the melting pot for the American dream, and they bring their ethnicity with them. Now, it's hard for me because the thing I hear a lot to them is, you're in America now, you need to speak English. They don't identify with that. Some of you may have ran into that same issue. Maybe you're out at a store and you're bilingual and you're speaking with a friend and you're speaking in Spanish, or you're speaking in Creole, or you're speaking in French, and people just give you dirty looks. You need to know how that feels. If you, as an American who speaks English, goes to a different country and you're speaking English, would you want one of them to look at you and say, you're in Spain now, speak Spanish? I want you just to think about how that would feel, because I know you have patrons that come in and they have difficulties probably speaking with you, but they're coming in to get help. And how do you deal with the students that come into you that speak a different language? Go ahead, because I think that'll help a lot. We have 19 participants in here, and I think it'll help a lot for everyone to see if you don't speak Spanish and you had a patron come in that speaks Spanish. Maybe they'll try some English with you, but they're a little afraid because they have broken. How do you deal with these patrons? Dawn, I do see that all the time also. As an African American, there's stereotypes. And that's when we get into that. Also, you'll see that stereotype of an African American, you're here to rob me. But that's not the case. But I see where you're coming from. I love that you guys are all typing. Can't wait to read your responses. See, try your little bit of Spanish. Tanya, I'm with you 110%. My Spanish is no bueno, but I use it on a daily basis. When I get into Portuguese, I still try speaking Spanish and hoping that they pick up a little bit. Catherine, I see the pictures or objects and asked a colleague for assistance. It's amazing when you have someone near you that can help out and be a translator. Pictures, objects, those are perfect ways to help. Speak slowly. Now, I love that you typed that, Dawn, with you speak slowly. It brings me to think about my mother, who I had a friend who always had foreign exchange students. And when they came to our house to visit, instead of just speaking slowly, my mother almost forgot that they could hear also, and she'd choose to talk loud and slow because she was out of her comfort zone. Gestures. Those are awesome ones. Now, how many of you have drawn maps or just taken someone by the hand and walked them over to where you think that they wanted to go? To me, I love when we have this melting pot and we have these different people that come in and they're asking for help. They want to learn, and we're there. We're the front line to help them. I had a student in kindergarten who, the first time I dealt with a student that spoke Portuguese, and she had to go to the bathroom, but I had absolutely no idea what the word was that she was using. I'm trying to use my students around me to translate for her. I'm trying to use all of these things that you're suggesting, and I just looked at her and I wanted to cry for her because she was about to cry. So I did. I pulled out that piece of paper and I put it in front of her with a pen, and she drew a picture of a toilet. And I was like, yay, now I know what to do. Now I know where you want to go. That language, I never once told her to lose. I think it is amazing when we have people that can speak other languages. I would love to become fluent in another language. I just can't seem to find the time, and my brain doesn't seem to wrap around the right way to conjugate verbs. So when you're dealing with ethnicity, just know that language is a part of who they are, just as English is a part of who you are. You have to open your eyes. You have to love yourself and love you speaking English, and love that if you're not someone that can speak a different language, you have to love that also. but you have to know that part of another person's identity is the language that comes along with it. I could go on for hours about ethnicity, but we're going to go past that and we're going to go to gender. Now, gender refers to how a particular culture differentiates masculine and feminine social roles. Different cultures, we're going back to that, differentiate masculine and feminine. You see that it doesn't say male and female because gender is something that people confuse themselves with all the time. Your sex may be a female, but maybe you're more masculine. Or maybe your sex is a male and you're more apt to Broadway plays and more things that we as a culture say are feminine social roles. I want you to think of a time in your life, whether you're male or female, I believe we have mostly females in here, where you like to do something, or maybe even now you still like to do something that's considered more masculine than what a cultural female would do. You can type that while I talk. I know I love to go mudding. Give me a four-wheeler, let me put on my boots and go out there and get dirty. I love to play football. I love to just go fishing. These are all things that our culture sees as masculine. Gail, I am with you right there. Wearing makeup, I only put a little bit on when I'm going somewhere that culturally maybe I need to have it on. Watching speedboat racing. These are masculine things. Maybe they're not wearing makeup. But our culture identifies us as females by what we wear and what we do. When I look in a magazine, I get confused. Sharon, I will say, when I go fishing, and I don't know if you have this, I go out fishing, I'm usually the only female standing on the pier fishing. NASCAR racing, football, hunting. These are all things that norms in society are telling you, but where do these norms come from? Where could we get confused on our gender? Pick up a Cosmopolitan. And you look at it, and there is a size 0 supermodel wearing scantily dressed clothes with high heels, makeup, and her hair done. Have you been to your local Walmart? I haven't walked around there and found a supermodel yet. I can walk around the mall and I don't find them. The only place I ever see supermodels is in magazines. But the way that people look at supermodels in our culture is that's what we as women are supposed to be. So your identity as a woman, you look at that and you're like, well, maybe I am more masculine. But you're a female. Lily, you are so right. Maybe we need to take you to Walmart so everybody can see a supermodel. So you just have to, you have to look in the mirror at yourself and you have to be okay with it. This is where your confusion can set in. Well, maybe these male things that I like to do, maybe that makes me more masculine and maybe that's why I'm this. No, don't try to question who you are. Stay as you are. That makes you the different person from everyone else in the world. When it shows here on the second bulletin point, culture influences on what constitutes gender, beauty, and how it's displayed. So Denmark's fashion. If you don't know Denmark's fashion, Google it. There's some really weird things. Why do I call them weird? Because in my culture and in my background, I wouldn't wear these things. In Japan, their language. And America, we have We have tanning. We want to be tan. We want the nice caramel colored skin. We go out and we do it. And that's just different influences that society has on us to try to change who we are. But when we go back to the stages, we see that most of our identity was formed by the way we were 30. If we go past gender, we go into our national identity. Refers to your nationality. And it's more pronounced when you're away from your home country. Now, I will tell you, as a person who lives in the United States, I went to France for a vacation. I don't normally wear shoes and socks because I live in Southwest Florida, and let's be honest, flip-flops are what I always wear. When I was in France and I was walking around, I had on white socks with my tennis shoes. Everyone knew I was from the United States. It was more pronounced when I was away from my home country of who I was and my nationality. When we have people that move here from other places, who do they decide who they are? If any of you have come from a different country, then are you American? Are you Puerto Rican? Are you Bolivian? What do you consider yourself? When you're thinking of your identity, you have to think of what your nationality is. Now, right here it says an interesting phenomena currently happening where young adults from EU think of Europe as their native land. Texans, Quebecers. So it's different places that you think where you're at. Now, even in the United States, we might have different ones where we think we are, and that goes into our regional identity. And in the United States, we have different things that happen in different areas. I'm from Michigan originally. We talk a little slower up there. We may even sound funny to some people. If you go to Minnesota, you hear the Minnesota, and they talk like that. When you come to the South, not Florida, because Florida's not the South, but when we go to Georgia and Alabama, you get the Southern draw. And if you grew up in a different region of the United States, you'll see this. Down here in Southwest Florida, because of the melting pot and the different ethnicities that come here, our food is completely different than a lot of the different areas of the United States. We have a lot of Spanish food that we eat. Spanish flair is added to many things. If you go to California, they're right on the coast. Fresh, wholesome, organic foods. So I see that Dawn said that she was from Massachusetts. Sharon, I'm believing you're from Texas. Do we have anyone else that was not born and raised in Southwest Florida? You're from somewhere else in the United States? Catherine, Ohio. Oh no. Go Michigan. Muskegon Heights. Woohoo! Now, you're proving my point right here that Florida is not the South, because Florida is, to me, one of the biggest melting pots of the United States. We have people that not only come from different countries that want to live here, but different areas of the United States. And I'm sure for you guys that are from different areas in the United States, you see the contrast of your hometown to where you are now. The ethnicities are different. I know growing up in Grand Rapids, Michigan, we have a huge Bosnian population. Down here, I have yet to meet a Bosnian that lives in Southwest Florida. And the languages, I taught in Michigan for 2 years, and the only other language I ever heard was Spanish. Then when I moved down here and lived in Collier County and got a job at a school, I walked in, and the first day I was faced with Creole and Spanish and different dialects of Spanish. So when we're talking about the regional identity here, and we're talking about thank you, Diane. When I moved down here and I got those different ones, I saw the different dialect people talked. Now, in the South, there's a dialect. When you move to Mexico, you have different dialects through there. Every region has their own way of looking at things. And when we are looking at the political races in the United States, when we're voting for president, you have what Florida is historically a Republican state. You have states that are historically Democratic, and that's just what our regional identity is. You, living in the region, might go, oh, well, when I lived here, I was a Democrat. I always voted Democrat, but now I'm here in Florida, and I feel pushed that I have to vote Republican. Or you have a neighbor who is pushing you one way. That's what our region does to us. And the dress of a region. We wear flip-flops down here in Florida all the time. If I went back to Michigan right now and wore my flip-flops, they'd laugh me out of the state. So you have to identify in your region of who you are. When we go past region, we can get into an organizational identity. And in collectivist cultures, organizational affiliation is more important. In the United States, we say Dr. so-and-so. And in Japan, people are introduced first by where they work. I don't go around and I go, hi everyone, I'm teacher Julie Tompkins. But our culture doesn't value that as much. Doctor, yes, if I earned a doctoral degree, I would be walking around going, hi, I am Dr. Tompkins. I'll just let you guys all know that now. But I have my master's degree. I don't walk around and say, hi, Julie Tompkins, MS. If I was in a different country, then maybe that would be something that was more important. In Japan, knowing where someone works is more important to them than it is here in the United States. So that's just touching on a different kind of identity. Now, one that's becoming prevalent in the world as a whole is the cyber and the fantasy identity. I'm pretty sure many of you have some sort of internet site that you visit frequently, whether it's Instagram or Twitter or Facebook. And problem with these is people can't see you. And the internet provides an opportunity to escape the constraints of everyday identities. You can be anyone you want to be on the internet. An infatuation with imaginary personas can become so strong that they take on a life of their own. There's a TV show, it's called Catfish. If you've ever seen Catfish, you'll see that this is about people who go on the internet and they meet someone on there and they fall in love with them. Majority of the time they find out that these people are fake. And living out a different identity online living out a different identity online can help you change who you feel you are. And there's some people that start blogs. That could be almost a fantasy identity as well, because you can go on there and you can write and you can talk about anything that your little heart desires, and nobody truly knows who the person is behind there. So, because I'm getting some fun responses, I just want to know, does anyone have a blog that they write on, or maybe an Instagram or a Facebook account that is set up not as you? but as someone different? That's awesome. Well, I do, but it's not, it could be considered a fantasy identity. I'm also a photographer. Like, that's my relaxing thing that I like to go do. So I have an Instagram account set up with different photos that I take. And the people that follow me on there, which for those of you that don't have those forms of communication, following means that they found you and they think that you're kind of cool. So they start clicking on your pictures and they follow you around to see the different things that you post. My imaginary persona on there is that I'm an actual, like, certifiable photographer, which some may consider me. I pretend I am. I may get paid to do it, but not very much, and I'm not like the greatest because Photoshop can help a lot. When I'm on there, I love to find people who aren't in my normal circle of friends. They're not the ones that, if you went to my Facebook page, are the ones that I communicate with. These are different people from all over the world that like the pictures that I take. And when I'm having a bad day, it's nice sometimes to go on as an imaginary person and have this fantasy identity of a photographer and have people saying nice things to me. We see this happening with students on a daily basis. They go in, they create these fantasy identities, and they meet friends from far away. Why? They don't have at school those peer relationships that are positive. So they're trying to reach out and find these positive relationships elsewhere. Sharon, great question. No, I don't feel that they wouldn't be nice to me if they knew who I was, but it's nice to have this persona where I can type things and I can share from my heart things that if I told my real friends, they might laugh at me, and I don't like to be laughed at sometimes. Do you understand what I mean when I say that? It's not that my friends would not be nice to me, but it's more of I like to get the positive information from outside people, because your friends usually are people that will give you positive affirmations in your identity. That's why you have them as friends. So it's nice to have someone that doesn't truly know you give you positive affirmations. Awesome. And another one is a virtual world where they have avatars, and it's popular for virtual business meetings. Hi guys, what are we doing this on? We're over the internet right now. We're doing this cyberly. You never know who this person is. You haven't seen a picture of me. You have no idea my identity behind this screen. And a lot of business meetings are turning to this way. It's more cost effective and it's easier to control. We can get more people in. Maybe we have people that are down in the Keys right now that are communicating with me here in Fort Myers. And when you're doing virtual business meetings, it makes it easier. But you have these little avatars. For those of you that don't know what avatars are, it's where you take a little cartoonish character of you and you dress it up how you want other people to perceive you. So that is going into the meetings. Maybe I'm a little overweight. Maybe when I make my avatar, I make it this skinny little stick figure. And I give it long flowing hair and beautiful blue eyes, just because that's what I've always wanted. And when we meet in person, you're going to look at what my avatar was and then look at me and go, whoa, that was a fantasy. That's not who you are. But the cyber fantasy is one that we need to look at because people, there's a song about that too, Sharon. The cyber fantasy is one that's more prevalent in today's society with the internet. So when you're looking at your identity, we have our racial identity, our ethnic identity, our gender identity, our national identity, our regional identity, our organizational identity, and our cyber fantasy identity. Like, how am I supposed to know who I am and keep track of all of these different identities? easiest way to do that is to just be you and stay on your path. Then you won't have these made up identities. Now, when we're looking at intercultural interactions between identities, cultural identity is a focal element in intercultural communication. So you need to find a middle ground. You know who you are, someone else knows who they are, and in order to communicate with each other, you need to find that middle ground, which goes back to me asking, what do you do if you have someone that you can't communicate with? You guys came up with great ways, and if some of you were having a hard time with that, I hope you look at some of these ways that some of the other participants communicate, and you take those and you use those with your patrons. When we look at this third paragraph on here, it says, with so many intercultural marriages, many U.S. youths consider cultural diversity as a normal part of social life. So true. Back when I was growing up, I'm 35, and back when I was growing up, my first boyfriend was African American. And when I brought him home to my Southern father, let's just say he had a few words with me. And that made me think about who I was in my identity and the people that I liked and wanted in my life. Because it was not a societal norm back then for intercultural marriages and relationships. And now people don't look twice. And the youth are looking at it going, oh, that's normal. Was there any time that it wasn't normal to have this? And when we look back at history, yes. There were so many times that intercultural marriages and using different relationships were not okay in society. We also have the dark side of identities, stereotypes, prejudice, racism, and ethnocentrism. So when we're talking about stereotypes, it's when you think about a group of people and you make a mental assumption of who they are. Like me, here we go, and I'm not trying to be rude when I say this, but I'm talking to librarians. So I'm expecting if you were standing in front of me to be a bunch of 70, 75-year-old white women. Why? Because that's just how society, growing up, made me feel that all librarians were. And when you think of a teacher, you might think of a buttoned-up shirt and a ruler in their hand and smacking on it. But that's not how I am. I'm young, outgoing, and fun. Students come in and they're like, oh, you're the teacher, you're going to be mean. And then after about a week, they change their way of thinking. We have prejudice where we have negative feelings associated with a particular group. Now, when I teach college, we have an open mind where I speak and they listen, and I tell them anything that happens in this room doesn't go out of this room. And I'm really not prejudiced, and I don't have racism. But if you don't speak about it to people, then you don't get it out. And you need to get it out before you can decide how you're going to feel. But it's part of our identity. Part of your identity is you probably have stereotypes about people. You probably have prejudice against someone. In you, there may be a little racism. And if we look at the last one down there, it says one's own culture is superior to any other. Now, when I'm in the United States, you might have these people that come up to you that are from other ones that are like, I am France, and France is amazing, and I must love this. But that's a dark side of identity. That's how they're going to identify, and that's who they are. But we might look at that and go, oh. And then you just have to look at yourself and figure out where these are and ask yourself, why do I have these stereotypes? Why do I have these prejudice? Why do I feel a little racism towards this? And once you get that, that's going to help you with your identity. And I sure hope that later on in this institute, we do go into stereotypes a lot more, because there are so many of them that are prevalent that are holding us back as a society and holding us back with identifying who we are. Now, these next few slides we're going to click through quickly because I know we're coming up on the time. And I only put them in here because when you're talking about your identity, culture falls into play. And we have the topical, the functional, and the mental. And if you go back and you review this, you'll see that I got this off of somebody else's slideshow. And it talks about the meaning of culture. And it's different things that people have said about where culture stands and the definitions of it. And you'll see that everyone has different meanings on the same thing. When you're going with your identity, people are going to associate your identity with you. And if you want it to change, you can see that people have different definitions of culture. They have different definitions of identity. You have to figure out where you stand. What is your culture? Who you are. So now that brings us back to where we started with our web. This is who you are as a person. This is your identity. And I would love for you to take time after this, or once this is up on Swiftland's website, for you to pull this up. Maybe you even print this out and put it next to you. But when you're trying to figure out who you are, when you're going through this Diversity Institute, if you don't know who you are, it's going to be hard for you to figure out who other people are. If you don't love yourself, you're not going to be able to love others. You have to know where you fall in this web. What is your individual identity? So, with that, we'll finish up by me saying, are there any questions? Anyone want a little further information about anything on this web? Anything I can be a little more clear about?
Well, Julie, while everybody is typing all of those wonderful, perfect accolades, I want to go ahead and add mine. And if anyone has any questions, we are monitoring your wonderful chats come in. And your accolades for Julie. This was a wonderful second webinar, Julie. Very informative, very engaging. I love to see the interaction in between the participants and all of the great ideas that you've shared today. Just a perfect embodiment of the diversity that we're trying to learn throughout this series. Remember that this is the second webinar in a series of 9. We're very lucky to have Julie with us as part of this journey on which we've embarked. Great information. I'm glad you were with us this morning. We will be working with Julie and the other trainers because, of course, you know, we wouldn't be diverse if we didn't work with different trainers on the upcoming topics for DDI. Our next webinar, currently under construction, is going to be held on Friday, January 16th of, drumroll please, 2015. And it is called V is for the Values we each bring to our community. Registration is now open, so we encourage you, while you're thinking about it now, while you're excited now about what Julie just taught you. I'm trying to read and look at the, I can't multitask, so I'll just be quiet. I encourage you to go register now while you're thinking about it. Go to swiftland.org, click on the calendar, find January 16th, and please go ahead and click and register for V is for the Values that we each bring to our community. Remember that you have to register for each of those webinars as we finalize them. So please keep checking our CE calendar on the website. You know, if you haven't liked us on Facebook, I know there goes the rolling of the eyes for those of you that hear this from me so much. If you haven't liked us on Facebook, please go and do so, because when you turn your Facebook on and we finalize the next event, you will hear about it first, and then you can go and click, and then you can go and register on that. And if not, remember, you can follow us on Twitter. Yes, we tweet about them too. Or you can look for your friendly message from the listserv that we will be preparing and sending out. So thank you, everyone, for attending. Have a terrific and safe weekend, and I hope you're planning something fun. I know I'm planning on writing an annual report, which just thrills me to no end. I'm going to take it back to the floor to Julie and see if anybody has any more questions for Julie or comments.
Like, haven't seen any questions come up there. Just remember.
Yeah, I stopped looking. I stopped looking because I was like, I can't look at that thing going while I'm trying to talk.
Nope, haven't got any questions, but on the first page of this presentation was my email address. If you have any questions, comments, or you just need someone that doesn't know you, that you would like to talk about some of the questions that you may have about your identity, go ahead, feel free to email me. I am a judgment-free zone, and it was a pleasure coming in here. I hope to see you again for a different letter, and enjoy your wonderful weekend.
And thank you, Julie. Awesome. I think everyone is going to be excited, and I'm going to be watching those registrations for January 16th, 10 a.m. Eastern, skyrocket over the weekend. I see at least 13 people that are going to register. And we will have Julie back for another letter I think the E is up as well, correct, Aaron? Your new CE coordinator, Aaron Blumberg?
E is up. Right now it is just E, so if you'd like to sign up for the future, you can do so. We will add the information for that as we can. But right now it is on for February 20th, it is on there, so feel free to sign up early.
Yeah, we'll surprise you with what does E stand for. Maybe Julie will come back for R, because we're working right now on getting everything identified, and she's got great ideas, and so we hope she'll be back and join us for more. Yes, Donna Fluharty, we will be posting Julie's PDF of the presentation with the webinar link on the Swiftland website. That Aaron has put for you in the chat box. And since you did attend, Donna, hopefully by the end of the day today, you will receive your very own link that has the edited version, meaning, the 2 hours before the webinar began, that we edit out so you don't have to endure all of my audio checks. You'll be receiving the edited webinar link with your evaluation so that you can SurveyMonkey and tell us what you thought about it today. And you will also, if you requested a certificate, be receiving that in a separate email. And it'll be posted on the Swiftland website. And if we can skyrocket it, we'll do that too. Okay, well, it's 11:31, and unless anybody has any more questions, we will consider today's wonderful webinar to be closed. Finished.